Since the passage of the USA Freedom Act, a law that struck a balance between privacy and national security, is the FBI experiencing any difficulty in complying with the new law?
We have not, Mr. Chairman. We haven't yet gotten to the place where the system, the alternative system for telephone metadata has been built, but so far we haven't seen an adverse impact.
But you're getting very close to that, I think.
Yes, sir.
The date when the metadata collection will be completely turned off.
Yep, end of next month, I believe.
Even with a decade's worth of information on Iraqi refugees, didn't we still encounter cases of domestic terrorism conducted by those admitted as refugees? With significantly less information on potential Syrian refugees, isn't it true that you can't ensure that the Iraqi experience is not going to be replayed?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, you're correct that we did discover in people who had come in as refugees from Iraq a number of people who were of serious concern, including two that were charged when we found their fingerprints on improvised explosive devices from Iraq. And there's no doubt that that was the product of a less than excellent vetting that had been done on Iraqi refugees. There's good news and bad news. The good news is we have improved dramatically our ability as an interagency, all parts of the U.S. government, to query and check people. The bad news is our ability to touch data with respect to people who may come from Syria may be limited. That is, if we don't know much about somebody, there won't be anything in our database. In fact,
much less than we would have access to when we were in Iraq.
I think that's fair.
Had extensive networking and access to information about Iraqi citizens. That simply does not in any way compare to the lack of information we have today about Syrian nationals who are seeking refugee status in the United States.
I think that's a fair generality. That the data we had available to us from Iraq from a decade of our folks being there, encountering people, is richer than the data we have from Syria.
The director of the National Security Agency has said that former Secretary of State Clinton's private email server would be a sought-after target for a foreign intelligence agency. Do you also believe that a foreign intelligence agency, particularly in adversaries, could benefit from acquiring and exploiting sensitive and classified information of a top-level U.S. government official?
Mr. Chairman, I respectfully say that's one I'm not going to comment on. As you know, the FBI is working on a referral given to us by inspectors general in connection with former Secretary Clinton's use of a private email server. As you also know about the FBI, we don't talk about our investigations while we're doing them. This is one I'm following very closely and get briefed on regularly. I'm confident we have the people and the resources to do it in the way I believe we do all our work, which is promptly, professionally, and independently. But I don't want to do anything that would compromise my ability to do it that way by commenting beyond that.
Well, how about answering my generic question, not directed at the specifics of that case, but rather the question of whether you believe that a foreign intelligence agency, particularly in adversaries, could benefit from acquiring and exploiting sensitive and classified information of a top-level U.S. government official?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I hope you'll understand why I don't think it's appropriate for me to answer that. I want to preserve my ability to oversee this investigation in a way that is both in reality independent and fair and is perceived that way. I believe the Bureau is three things. We are competent, we're independent, and we're honest. And I want to make sure the American people have confidence that that's the way we're doing our business. And if I start answering questions like yours, which is a reasonable question, I worry that I could infringe upon that.
You've said that encryption represents the going dark problem in high definition. Earlier this month, you testified in front of the Senate Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee that the Obama administration has decided to no longer seek a legislative remedy to address challenges law enforcement faces with encryption and going dark. What has changed, and do you agree with the concerns that I and the ranking member, Mr. Conyers, have expressed about some of the proposals that had previously been made with regard to addressing this problem?
I think what the administration has decided, Mr. Chairman, is that it's not going to seek a legislative remedy now, so that we can continue the conversations we're having with the private sector, with our allies around the world and with state and local law enforcement who are hugely impacted by this, and I think that makes good sense. I don't think we're yet to a place where we know exactly, so how would we fix this legislatively? This is a very hard problem. I think you and Mr. Conyers have raised serious questions and concerns. I believe this is an incredibly hard problem because two sets of values we all care about, safety and security on the internet. I'm a big fan of strong encryption for the reasons you said. It helps us fight cybersecurity, it helps us protect all that matters most to us personally and as a nation, and public safety that we all care about. And those two things are colliding with each other. There's not an easy answer, but given how important both of those values are and what's at stake, I think we have to wrestle with it, and we're continuing to do that. We're having very good conversations along all the dimensions I just said, and we'll continue it, I hope.
I just came from a meeting with Bill Gates, who indicated that the progress being made in quantum computing is dramatic, and that computers of that high capability will soon be able to crack any kind of encryption that anyone has. That I found to be very interesting information. I have both good and bad views of that, because obviously that can be seriously abused and invade the privacy of law-abiding citizens, but it also will be a source of solving your problem when you encounter encrypted materials by people who are suspected enemies of the United States or criminals capable of using high technology to protect themselves and evade prosecution under the law. Do you have any comments or knowledge about the current state of quantum computing?
Nothing that would be useful to you. I've read about it in the popular press. I only have 8 years left in my term. I have a hard time imagining a police officer in New York City in a kidnapping case having access to a quantum computer anytime in the near future when they encounter a device that's locked. And so it may be someday that's an answer to the challenge, to the conflict of those two sets of values. I don't see it anywhere in the near term.
Thank you.